One of the most prominent themes held throughout Attack on Titan's story is the concept of necessary evil, that to defeat a monster, one must first become one themselves. And this concept is used by many of the prominent characters in Attack on Titan to justify their actions. Though the term necessary evil is almost contradictory in and of itself, in that if an action is necessary, it cannot be evil, and if that action is bad yet unavoidable, then morality cannot play a part. A famous example of necessary evil is the trolley problem. Imagine there's a runaway trolley headed towards 5 people who are tied to a track and will be killed if the trolley continues. But you are standing next to a lever that can switch the trolley onto a different track where there is only one person tied up. You must decide whether to pull the lever, sacrificing one person to save 5. Do you do the necessary evil, killing 1 to save 5? Or do you stand by believing that intentionally causing harm is inherently wrong, regardless of the consequences? I say this to illustrate that necessary evil is a moral framework, not an objective truth. Not everyone subscribes to the belief that the ends justify the means. This leads many of the characters who follow this framework to question their actions repeatedly. As their actions become more evil, they question the necessity, with some continuing to follow this framework and others changing their stance. Necessary evil is a great storytelling tool in making sympathetic villains, as it lets the viewer see their justifications for their actions, making them feel more genuine and dynamic. Bear with me for a second, but Thanos is a perfect example of this. We see the thought process behind why he set out to do what he does. He's experienced famine and overpopulation on his home planet, and with resources being finite, he sees the only way to fix this problem is to wipe out half of the universe, so that no one will ever again experience what he witnessed. And in some ways we can sympathize with his actions. Now, that's not to say genocide is justified, obviously, but we get to see why characters such as Erwin go to such extremes to achieve their goals. And while it may be flawed at times, we understand their thought process. And Attack on Titan uses this concept brilliantly. And there are countless examples of this concept throughout Attack on Titan's story. But for this video, there are only a few specific characters and battles I want to focus on. Firstly, the Battle of Trost with Commander Pixis and Ian from the Elite Squad. On the day following their graduation, the trainees of the 104th Cadet Corps are stationed in Trost District, discussing which branch of the military they'll be joining, when Bertolt transforms into the Colossal Titan, kicking a hole through the outer wall of Trost. Under the command of the garrison, the trainees were divided into squads assigned to various streets throughout the district. The main force of the garrison took up the vanguard, where the Titans would enter the breach, while the trainees were assigned to the middle ground for support and communication. The garrison's elite squad took up the rear guard near the northern gate to ensure the best evacuation for civilians, with Mikasa joining them. While Mikasa joined the rear guard, Erwin was assigned to Squad 34 along with Armin and the other recruits. However, shortly into the conflict, Erwin and the others were quickly overwhelmed by the Titan threat, with Erwin sacrificing his life to save Armin. After being eaten, Erwin's Titan abilities activate, transforming him into the Attack Titan, where he goes on a rampage, killing any Titan in sight. After Erwin's Titan form is overwhelmed by the other Titans, he is saved by Mikasa and the others once they see him emerge from the Titan's nape. Carrying Erwin, they escape over the walls where they are faced by the garrison's firing squad. But through the interventions of Armin and Commander Pixis, Erwin and the others are able to escape death again. While atop the wall with the main trio, Armin proposes the plan to use Erwin's Titan ability to seal the hole in Trost's outer wall by using the giant boulder to Pixis. But before the mission to plug the hole with the boulder takes place, and Pixis' iconic speech from the wall, there is a scene with Erwin and Commander Pixis atop the wall where Pixis tells Erwin a story of a man who said humanity needed an enemy greater than themselves to unite and survive. Though Erwin jests at the idea, pointing out that even with the Titans right outside the walls, humanity still fights among themselves. This is ironic, as by the end of the series, Erwin embodies this idea, effectively uniting Marleyans and Eldians by becoming the greatest threat to humanity. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, and we'll return to Erwin later.
It's thought by many that before the Titans held sway, mankind consisted of scores of different races, different creeds, all scratching and biting at each other for blood. It's not difficult to believe that second part. Some wise man or other is reputed to have said, though understand I'm paraphrasing here, that humanity required an enemy greater than itself just to survive. What do you suppose he could have meant?
This is the first time I've ever heard it, sir. I guess he thought we'd all join forces? Some wise man.
I like the way your mind works. You're almost as twisted and cynical as me.
Well, it's obvious to me the guy didn't have a clue what he was talking about. Come on, here we are with an enemy greater than ourselves bearing down, and look at us.
Exactly. If our species doesn't pull it together soon, Titans will be merely the instruments of our demise, not the cause.
Following their discussion atop the wall, during Pixis' speech, he mentions one of the first instances of necessary evil in the story. After Wall Maria fell, there were missions labelled as reconnaissance in the hopes of taking back the wall. However, their true intention was to cull the population, as the resources left within the inner walls was not enough to sustain the refugees. Following this, he proposes his plan to seal the wall. For their mission to seal the wall, Pixis places his trust in Erwin's Titan abilities to close the wall, knowing that ultimately Scout's lives will be sacrificed in protecting Erwin during this mission. And throughout the mission we see many characters question this judgment. Specifically, I want to talk about the Elite Squad. Pixis tasks them with the sole mission of protecting Erwin, though they have their doubts. As up to this point, Erwin's abilities are still an unknown variable, but Pixis refutes them, stating their only other alternative is to give themselves over to the Titans willingly, and that he's willing to resort to extreme measures if it means a single victory. As by this point, humanity hasn't had a single victory against the Titans, so to continue doing what they've done is almost certainly going to result in a greater loss of lives for humanity. Once the mission begins, many of those concerns bear truth, as once Erwin transforms into the Attack Titan, he goes rogue, attacking Mikasa and incapacitating himself. When Erwin goes rogue, and the red flare is fired, Pixis refuses to order a retreat, instead leaving the decision up to the Elite Squad. We see the other soldiers advising Pixis to order a retreat, as the whole time Erwin's mission is taking place, soldiers' lives are being lost. But Pixis refuses, showing us that he's willing to sacrifice those lives on the chance that Erwin can complete his mission. But we don't see Pixis as an evil character in this moment, because we understand the stress he's placed under, and the knowledge that this mission is humanity's last hope. Because if Trost District and Wall Rose were to fall, more lives would be lost due to famine and overpopulation than the amount of lives lost defending Erwin. After cutting to Pixis' point of view, the story cuts back to the Elite Squad, where we see Ian trying to convince the others that Erwin isn't a lost cause and they must stick to their original plan. Ian remarks that they're all expendable, but Erwin is humanity's last best chance, which Rico refutes.
Change of plans. Our job now is to keep the others off him until he can be recovered. Whether we like it or not, he's still our last best chance. We're not about to abandon him. We're expendable. He isn't. He can't just be replaced.
Please, don't talk to me about our last best chance. He's a failure countless soldiers have died because of. Just look at him, Ian. Are you saying you want more of us to die saving that?
That's right. Down to the last man. If that's what it takes, so be it!
Right now, Ian is following this framework, showing us that he'll do whatever it takes to finish their mission and give humanity their first victory against the Titans, even if it means all his comrades must die in the process, and unfortunately many of them do. With Erwin approaching the wall with the boulder on his back, the scouts face an increased number of Titans within the vicinity of the wall, and as they fight to defend Erwin, Ian and Mitabi from the Elite Squad are killed. Ian, ironically dies while saving a soldier from the mouth of a Titan, a soldier whose life he was willing to sacrifice to achieve their mission. And with that, Erwin seals the whole, awarding humanity their first victory against the Titan, but not without great casualty. Ian and Pixis both do the necessary evil to achieve this victory, but as the viewer, we can understand their struggles and the impossible choices they must make. While some may still argue that it's morally reprehensible to willingly sacrifice all those soldiers' lives, I think most people would agree that it was the best choice they had given the circumstances. But as Attack on Titan's story progresses, these kinds of choices become increasingly difficult for many of the cast, as the bodies continue to pile up, and we gain more insight into the enemies of Paradis. Throughout the story, the threat in the show begins to shift away from the Titans and towards the Marleyan threat. Doing whatever it takes to defeat the Titans is understandable, because they're mindless monsters whose sole purpose is to eat humans. So whatever's done to them can be done with a clear conscience because there is no moral grey area in their actions. They are just evil, pure and simple. But the Marleyans are different. The majority of the Marleyans have prejudice towards the Eldians. There are some who don't. There are innocents who live in Marley, hold no malice towards those from Paradis. So the necessary evils taken against Marley have more nuance. Sacrificing soldiers to kill mindless monsters who will stop at nothing until they have eaten every human in sight is understandable. But sacrificing soldiers to kill other soldiers and innocents, well, that raises more questions. Erwin is, in my opinion, the most prominent character that embodies this idea throughout the series. While Erwin does the most drastic example of necessary evil in the story, I feel Erwin's main characteristic is that he's a cunning, intelligent man that commands respect, and will stop at nothing in the pursuit of his goals and the betterment of humanity's future. He learns early on that to achieve his goals he'll be faced with impossible decisions, placing his men's lives in danger, but that is the only way to victory. In the second scene in the first episode of the show, we see a younger Erwin as a scout under the command of Keith Shardis, on a scouting mission engaged with Titans in the forest outside the walls. Keith orders the Survey Corps' attack group to engage the Titan, while he and the other soldiers act as decoys, but their mission is a failure. Returning to Shiganshina district, battered and broken, none of the soldiers dare raise their faces as they're crushed by their survivor's guilt. The only scout to face the crowd is Erwin, but seeing a young Eren smiling, he quickly looks away, not wanting any of the admiration in his eyes. As the group of scouts continues to walk through the streets led by Shardis, by an elderly woman from the crowd asking about her son. All Shardis can do in response is to give her what remains of her son, a bloody arm wrapped in cloth. Horrified and in tears, she asks him if he served well and aided humanity's cause even in the least bit. But he can't say it, breaking down under the weight of his decision, confessing that he was the one who sent those soldiers to their death and all of it amounted to nothing. All those lives sacrificed and humanity was no better for it.
Moses! Beg your pardon. Where is my son? He should be with you all. Oh, please tell me he made it.
I wish I had better news. Give it to her. I'm sorry. It's all that was left of him.
He did good, yes. He was brave. Tell me my son stood his ground to the bitter end. That his death meant something. tell me his sacrifice gave us a better chance!
He was brave. But his sacrifice meant nothing. So with all our losses, it's ever the same. The day was lost! We have nothing! Your son died because of me. I sent him to his death. I sent all of them to their deaths. And there's nothing to show for it! All of it amounts to nothing!
Following this, unable to stand the burden of those choices, those necessary evils to better humanity, Commander Shardis resigns and promotes Erwin as his successor. This is a pivotal point in Erwin's story, as he's well aware of the burdens of being the commander of the Scouts, and the decisions he'll inevitably have to make. We also learn in this scene the disdain some of those inside the walls have for the Scouts. As the Scouts leave, leaving a dour mood, one of the guys in the crowd remarks that the Scouts are nothing more than a waste of taxpayers' money. Throughout Attack on Titan's story, the actions characters make become progressively worse in the pursuit of their goals, and Erwin is no exception to this. It makes me think of the frog in boiling water analogy. If the show were to open up with Eren committing the rumbling, no one would side with him as the protagonist, but because we see Eren as an innocent child grow and be pushed to make such drastic choices to save those he loves, we see more people siding with Eren, with some seeing his actions as justified, and what's to say we would do any differently if we were in his position. The first example we see of Erwin sacrificing lives for his goal comes during the mission to apprehend the female Titan. Going into the mission, the majority of the Scouts are unaware of the true nature of the expedition, and this is by design. After the murder of Bean and Sonny, the two captured Titans, Eren is all but certain that there is a spy among the Scouts, so during the Scout recruitment ceremony he lays the groundwork for his trap. During his speech, Erwin makes public that they plan to head to the basement in Shiganshina district with Eren to possibly find clues that will bring humanity out from under the Titans' oppression. And the speech works, enticing Annie to pursue the Scouts and Eren before they can reach the basement. With Erwin and his closest allies being the only ones that know the true intention of this mission, many of the Scouts are caught unprepared and killed. After leaving Caranus district and reaching open territory beyond Wall Rose, Erwin orders the Scouts into long-distance enemy scouting formation. When the female Titan does appear, she completely decimates the right flank, as the Scouts are unaware that they should expect a Titan shifter to appear. But having said that, most of those Scouts would have met the same fate even if they knew to expect Annie's female Titan. But despite the decimation of the formation's right flank by an abnormal Titan, Erwin continues the operation to the surprise of his soldiers. He directs his forces to the Titan forest, with himself, the central column containing the cart and the Special Operations Squad following him inside, while the rest of the formation surrounds the forest perimeter to prevent the entry of any additional Titans. For Erwin's trap to be successful, he has to sacrifice some soldiers' lives, but we understand that. Erwin doesn't know who the spy is, so it's impossible for him to inform all his soldiers to expect the female Titans' attack and prepare. And even if he could somehow make sure everyone but the spy knew the true plan, if all the Scouts were ordered to run from any abnormal Titan, that may have tipped Annie off that it may be a trap. It had to be believable for the trap to work, and for it to be believable, Scouts would have to die. But Erwin's necessary evil is understandable to the viewer. We don't know why the Titan shifters want Eren, but we know that without Eren, humanity cannot defeat the Titan threat, and it's only a matter of time before humanity behind the walls falls. Erwin will sacrifice those lives to capture the female Titan, and improve humanity's understanding of the threat they face. Armin sums this idea up perfectly. While on the edge of the forest, he says the following.
I may be naive, but there's one thing I know beyond all doubt. Genuine harbingers of change must be able to do what others won't dare. Sacrifice their heart. Accept the burden of doing the unspeakable. Whether we'd like to admit it or not, the fact is this. To rise above monsters, we have to abandon our humanity. That's the irony, really. If you can't let it go, it's not worth holding on to.
While saying this, we see the two people Armin thinks of, Commander Pixis and Ian from the elite squad. And following this scene, we see why Erwin is so highly respected by his men. While Aaron's with Levi's squad, we see them discussing amongst themselves as they come to see the true nature of their mission. While some have questions, they don't doubt that Erwin made the right choice. Only Aaron has doubts, but they reassure him that in the end, he'll see why Erwin is trusted as the commander of the Survey Corps. But unlike Aaron, Levi's squad is filled with veteran scouts that understand the brutal reality beyond the wall, and the burdens one must uphold to be commander. To Erwin's credit, like the viewer, he's also unaware of the spy's Titan abilities, so it's impossible for him to know how much damage she could do to the scouts. Unfortunately, this underestimating leads to the failure of their mission, as he'd assumed the other Titan shifter would show similar proficiency to that of Aaron, who up until this point was still a novice. And again, in this moment, we don't see Erwin as the bad guy. He failed, but he did the best with what he could with the knowledge he had. However, even with the best intentions, it doesn't mean you'll be victorious, and in this case many scouts lost their lives with nothing to show for it. The only way the scouts can honor the fallen and ensure their lives weren't lost in vain is to continue on till the end. Mirroring the return of Shardis's failed mission from the first episode, Erwin and the others returned to Caranus district with fewer numbers that had left that morning. And with public perception of the scouts already being damaged, and the public's view of Aaron as a threat, this failure isn't taken well. The only thing those behind the walls can see are the bodies and the tax burdens the scouts are accumulating.
Give us some answers, damn you! We have a right!
How many lives were lost on this mission? Was it worth it? Was it really
You
worth
think the
it?
last thing going through their minds was for the good of humanity?
Most people inside the walls don't care about any grand ideas to save humanity. They just see Erwin risking lives for his own fulfillment. And they aren't entirely wrong, but I'll get to that later on. So, with their failure, Commander Erwin is summoned to the capital to face his war crimes, and Aaron is handed over to the military police. But before all this can go down, Armin has a shocking revelation. Using his two working eyes, he deduces that Annie is the female Titan, and relays this to Erwin and the others. Erwin agrees to the plan once he hears that he gets an opportunity to sacrifice more lives. Say less, Erwin replies. Going against the wishes of his superiors, Erwin will continue to pursue the female Titan within the capital. Their plan is to lure her into one of the city tunnels so that she can't transform into the Titan, but obviously this runs risk that if at any point she catches wind of the trap, she'll transform within the city. And you don't need me to explain how two Titans fighting in a densely populated city will inevitably lead to civilian casualties, and this is exactly what happens.
It's horrifying. We can only guess how many casualties.
Erwin, your arrogance has brought hell right to our door!
I know.
While the fighting is ongoing, after Erwin's arrest, he says something to Levi which I think gives a good insight into how Erwin thinks.
Erwin, I hereby wash my hands of you and leave you to the High Court.
I'll accept their judgment. Thank you, Niall. Levi, for now stay here. A pointless death wouldn't suit you.
No, I doubt it would. Any more than it suits anyone else.
He doesn't want to lose Levi to a pointless death. Levi, who is one of humanity's most valuable assets. If Levi were to die in the right moment, furthering humanity's cause, then maybe he'd feel differently. But Levi's response is that a pointless death would suit him just as well as anyone else Erwin might deem useless to humanity's cause. Erwin doesn't stop any of the other soldiers from engaging Annie and dying a pointless death, only Levi. So we know Erwin weighs people's lives depending on their usefulness for his own goals and for humanity. And I think that's why he's okay with the plan to trap Annie in the capital, because even if the plan goes wrong, those civilians that died were never going to fight for humanity anyway. Most of them have never even seen a Titan, and are more than content continuing their lives within the capital far away from any fighting. I don't believe Erwin holds disdain for these people, many of whom chastise him as the leader of the scouts and as a tax burden. I think he just sees it as almost entirely logical. These civilians weren't furthering humanity's cause, but capturing the female Titan will, so he's willing to make that bet. I say almost entirely logical, because Erwin has his own dreams he fights for, which are separate from his goals of fighting for humanity's survival. During his childhood, Erwin was fascinated with humanity's history before the Titans and Walls. He was curious as to why there was no records of humanity from this time, and this curiosity led him to joining the Survey Corps. But he learned early on not to discuss his dreams openly among his peers because he realized that everyone else was fighting for the sake of humanity, whereas he was only fighting for himself. Nonetheless, he thrived as a soldier and eventually was given subordinates under his command. And we see just how highly he holds this pursuit. He's willing to take great risks even to himself if it means getting closer to that goal. Obviously he doesn't want to die because then he'd never know, but he's willing to risk his body. While in hospital recovering from losing his arm, we see just how happy he is to hear Hanji's theory that Titans are actually humans. It's a small price for Erwin to pay if it takes him a step closer to the truth. I think there's no better scene to illustrate this than the conversation we see between Erwin and Zachary after they successfully overthrow the monarchy.
For the sake of humanity, it might have been better to let that government stand. Like Commander Pixis was saying, they have far more knowledge than us, and they've kept humanity going at least this far. Even if they would have watched as half of the human race perished, it's better than letting us go extinct. Should I have given up? Let them take Eren? Surrendered my life and put my comrades at risk? And put my trust in their selfish wisdom? Too late now. Instead, I endangered us all.
Your duty is as painful a burden as ever, I see. Perhaps death would have been easier for you. So tell me, why didn't you do as you just described?
I'm not sure.
Why don't I tell you my own reason? I've hated those arrogant bastards for a long time! Those self-assured pigs. They'd feed from gilded troughs and pretend their shit was gold. Know what? I think I might grow to like them. Now that the day I've dreamed of has finally come to pass. Well, at any rate, if you hadn't done it today, I would have given it a shot myself before I kicked the bucket. I honestly couldn't care less about how this coup of ours ends up affecting the fate of humanity. I guess I'm quite the scoundrel, huh? I'm telling you this because I know that you're the same. You made the choice that would keep you alive. Some part of you decided that humanity's fate only mattered if you could live to see it.
I must be incredibly conceited to think that.
It's your turn to answer now. Why did you risk it all just to bring them down?
I've had this dream. Something to prove. Ever since I was a child.
Erwin doesn't want to openly admit that the reason he went through with the plan, even though he had doubts that it was the best choice for humanity, was for his own personal goals. He feels alone in his selfish endeavor. It's only after Zachary admits that he too fights for his own fulfillment that Erwin admits it's all for the sake of his childhood dream. And we see him admit that the path he chooses is what he believes will keep him alive to fulfill that dream. But obviously he's willing to take calculated risks even on his own life. As I mentioned, he lost his arm. But just the act of joining the Survey Corps in the first place, and gambling his life during the coup, shows that in some capacity he's willing to bet his life if he believes he'll succeed. Above all, Erwin has his dream, and the will to live to see that dream fulfilled. But during his last moments, Erwin has to abandon his dream and sacrifice his own life for humanity's sake. I'm of course referring to his battle against the Beast Titan. At this moment, Erwin has no gamble he can make that would give him a good chance of survival. He has to abandon his dream, but he can't do it alone. Everything he's done has led him to this moment. All the risks he's taken, all the lives he's sacrificed, and if he can't reach his goal, then all of it will have been for nothing. But he can't make that choice alone. Levi has to make it for him.
For this to work, to convince these youths to charge toward their deaths, it would take an expert con man and a whole slew of blatant lies. If I don't lead the vanguard myself, then none of them will have the courage. Which means I must be the first to charge. And the first to be slain as well. So I'll never learn the truth. I just wanted to reach that cellar. Everything I've done up to this point, I did in the hopes that this chance would come. I dreamt that I'd get to prove I was right. Many times, I thought that death would have been easier. But then I think of the questions I needed answered. They're what I lived for. And now those answers are no more than a coward's leap away. I'm so close. But can you see them too? Our comrades, they're all standing around us. They've been watching us all this time. They want to know what we did with the sacrifices that they made. What became of the hearts they gave. But that's probably just in my head, right? Of no more import than a child's bad dream.
You led us well. Fought hard. No one else could have gotten us this far. I'll make the choice for you. Give up on your dream and charge to your death. Lead those crying children straight to hell. I'll reach the Beast Titan and tear him apart.
And he smiles, knowing now that he will never achieve his dream, but he'll no longer be burdened by the sacrifices he's made. During his speech, he's almost convincing himself that yes, all those hopes and dreams you fought for will end on the battlefield when you die, but there is still meaning to your life. For Erwin, he has led the scouts and humanity further than anyone before him, and just as he honored the fallen by never forgetting them and continuing to fight till the end, it's now his turn to lay down his life for humanity's sake and live on through the memories of his remaining comrades. This is where Erwin's story comes full circle. All those lives sacrificed for his dream, he now sacrifices his own life for others' dreams. With this sacrifice, Erwin and Armin can reach the sea, Hanji can uncover the truth of the Titan's origin, all his comrades have the chance for their own dreams, because in his final moment Erwin casts aside his own for their sake. Erwin is just one of the characters fighting for their dreams, and doing all those necessary evils, at least from their perspective, to achieve that. In Erwin's case, he dies with his dream unfulfilled, but this is just one of the outcomes the story shows us, and the viewer is left to decide which outcome is the best. Characters like Eren and Reiner are chasing their own dreams, and unlike Erwin, they achieve those dreams doing everything they can to get there, but you see just how defeated they are once they do. Reiner can't face his actions and wants to kill himself, while Eren can't even appreciate his dream once he's there. When he finally reaches the sea with Armin, all he's focused on is what's to come next.